Hey man, there's a moment every man faces in relationships. That crushing point where he convinces himself she doesn't care anymore. She stops texting as much. She pulls away when you lean in. Her words don't carry the same warmth, and suddenly the energy feels cold, detached, almost foreign. And in that moment, panic sets in. You start overanalyzing everything. The tone of her voice, the timing of her replies, the distance in her eyes. You assume the worst, that she's done with you, that her feelings have died, that you're just one step away from being discarded. But here's what most men don't realize. Women rarely reveal their care in the way you expect. Just because she isn't expressing it in a way that feels familiar to you, doesn't mean she doesn't care. In fact, sometimes the very silence you're panicking over is the clearest proof of her conflict. A woman's care doesn't always look like affection. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like anger. Why? Because when a woman truly cares, she feels vulnerable. That vulnerability scares her, and instead of leaning in, she pulls back to test herself, to test you, to test the strength of what she feels. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that she cares so much it unsettles her. She doesn't know how to handle the weight of her emotions, so she masks it with coldness. Think of it this way, indifference doesn't require energy, but her pulling away, her silence, her hesitation, that's energy, that's investment, and the fact that she's still reacting at all means you still matter more than you think. Before you assume she doesn't care, watch how she responds to your absence. A woman who is truly checked out doesn't notice when you go quiet, but a woman who's conflicted will always reveal herself in how she reacts to your silence. She might try to act unfazed, but she'll check your stories, glance at your messages, or drop hints through mutual friends. She'll test the waters to see if you've really pulled away, because in her world, losing you completely is a fear she doesn't want to face. This is why no contact is so powerful. It doesn't just create space, it reveals truth. If she truly doesn't care, she'll disappear without resistance. But if she does, even secretly, your silence will haunt her in ways your presence never could. What you need to understand is that care isn't always expressed through closeness. Often, it's expressed through resistance. When she argues with you, when she challenges you, when she seems impossible to please, those aren't signs of apathy, they're signs of emotional entanglement. A woman who doesn't care, won't argue, won't fight, won't push back. She'll simply detach. But the one who does care, even if she hides it, will wrestle with the intensity of her emotions, trying to find a balance between protecting herself and holding on to you. And in that wrestling, she shows the truth that she's not indifferent, she's scared, and fear, ironically, is one of the strongest proofs of care. So before you think she doesn't care, flip the perspective. Look not for the easy signs, the constant affection, the endless validation, but for the hard ones. Look for the conflict in her behavior. Look for the moments where her silence carries more weight than her words. Look for the frustration in her tone that only exists because she feels vulnerable. Care isn't always soft and comforting. Sometimes it's sharp, messy, and difficult to read, but it's still care. And the worst mistake you can make is walking away too quickly, assuming she doesn't feel anything, when in reality, she's just trying to survive the storm of her own emotions. The truth is, if she truly didn't care, you wouldn't even be questioning it. The fact that her behavior has you second-guessing means there's something deeper going on, and that's exactly why you need to pause before you decide she's finished with you. The truth is, when a woman truly doesn't care, she doesn't leave room for confusion. Indifference is clean, sharp, and unmistakable. She won't argue with you, she won't explain herself, she won't linger in half-hearted communication. She simply vanishes, emotionally, mentally, and eventually physically. But when you find yourself dissecting mixed signals, when one day she's warm and another she's distant, that's not apathy, that's turmoil. That's the push and pull of someone who's caught between her feelings and her fears. Men often mistake inconsistency for lack of care, when in reality, it's the very evidence that she's conflicted because she still cares. And the only reason she's battling herself is because you still matter enough to stir the storm inside her. Think about it this way. Care makes people unpredictable. When you don't care about someone, your behavior toward them is flat. There are no highs, no lows, no waves. But when emotions are involved, neutrality disappears. She might show frustration, she might pull back, she might even say things that sound harsh, but those spikes of energy are proof that she's emotionally entangled. They don't come from emptiness, they come from pressure, from her struggling to reconcile the intensity of her feelings with her need for control. And if you've ever noticed how she overreacts to something small, or how her mood changes dramatically in your presence, you're seeing care disguised as chaos. Don't mistake that for detachment. It's the exact opposite. Another thing most men overlook is how women protect themselves when they care deeply. Attraction, love, or emotional connection puts her in a vulnerable position. It exposes her. And when a woman feels exposed, her instinct is often to shield herself with distance, coldness, or even pretense. She might act like she's fine without you, but watch her actions carefully. Does she still linger in your orbit? Does she still notice the small things you do? Does she still react when you withdraw? Those are cracks in her shield. She may pretend she doesn't care, but her behavior betrays her. The pretense of indifference is often the strongest indicator that she actually cares more than she's willing to admit. Because if she truly didn't, she wouldn't need to act at all. Before you convince yourself she doesn't care, test the silence. Stop over-explaining, stop trying to fix, stop flooding her with reassurance. Just step back. Most men make the mistake of chasing harder the moment they sense withdrawal, thinking effort will fix the problem. But what it actually does is rob her of the space to feel the weight of your absence. If she doesn't care, your silence won't bother her, she'll simply move on. But if she does, your silence will scream louder than any words. It will make her restless. It will expose her fears. It will remind her of what she risks losing. And that's when you see the truth. If she comes looking for your presence when it's no longer freely given, that's not indifference, that's hidden care, revealed only when she thinks it's slipping away. The irony is this: the times you are most convinced she doesn't care are often the times she's wrestling with caring too much. Women aren't always direct with their emotions, especially when those emotions make them feel vulnerable. Instead, they bury them beneath distance, mood swings, or even denial. They try to convince themselves they don't need you, but if you look closely, their actions betray them. She may delay responding, but she'll always respond. She may act like she's moved on, but she'll still find ways to peek into your life. She may pretend to ignore you, but she'll never be able to detach fully. And it's in those contradictions, not the clean break of true indifference, that you'll find the proof of her care. So before you decide she's done, understand this confusion itself is the clearest evidence that she still feels something real. One of the clearest mistakes men make is believing that a woman's care should always be expressed in the ways they expect it: constant affection, steady words, open vulnerability. But women rarely show it that directly, especially when they feel conflicted. Sometimes her care looks like jealousy when she sees your attention elsewhere. Sometimes it looks like irritation when you pull back, even though she told you to give her space. Sometimes it looks like inconsistency, warm one day, distant the next, because she's torn between wanting you and protecting herself from being hurt by you. Men who don't understand this walk away at the first sign of distance, but those who pause and look deeper realize that inconsistency is not absence of care, it's evidence of struggle. It's proof that she's caught in the tension between what she feels and what she fears. You need to understand something critical. True indifference has no emotional spikes. If she truly didn't care, she wouldn't get jealous, she wouldn't get upset, she wouldn't notice your silence, and she certainly wouldn't go out of her way to test you. But when you see emotional reactions, even negative ones, it means she's still emotionally tethered to you. Think about it: if a stranger ignores you, it doesn't sting. But if someone you're invested in pulls away, you feel it. That's why when she shows frustration, when she seems bothered by your lack of effort, or when she challenges you for attention, it's not because she's indifferent, it's because you still matter enough to provoke that reaction. Those spikes of energy are care in disguise, and most men misread them as signs of detachment. Before you assume she doesn't care, pay attention to how she handles your successes and failures. A woman who is checked out won't flinch when you win or when you lose. She won't celebrate your highs or comfort you in your lows. She'll stay flat because her heart isn't invested. But a woman who does care, even if she hides it, can't help but react. She'll light up when you succeed, even if she tries to hide it behind casual words. She'll soften when you're down, even if she pretends not to notice. Care leaks through, in moments where it shouldn't matter, in the way her mood shifts when yours does. If she truly didn't care, your victories would mean nothing to her, and your struggles wouldn't touch her. But when she responds, even subtly, it's proof that your life still intertwines with her emotions. Here's the paradox. Most men never see the colder she acts, the more she reveals her fear of caring, because a woman who is completely detached doesn't need to act cold, she just leaves. But when she stays while acting distant, it means she's still holding on, but she's trying to protect herself from the vulnerability that comes with caring too deeply. That's why she'll put up walls, withdraw affection, or create tests for you. She wants to see if you'll remain steady when she isn't. She wants to see if your consistency is stronger than her doubts. And this is where most men fail. They misinterpret the wall as abandonment, instead of seeing it for what it is, a defense mechanism born from investment. A woman only builds walls where she feels something worth protecting. So before you think she doesn't care, ask yourself, is she still reacting? Is she still paying attention, even if she tries to hide it? Is she still present in your world, even if her presence feels inconsistent? If the answer is yes, then her care hasn't disappeared. It's just been buried under layers of fear, pride, or uncertainty. And this is where you have to shift your perspective. Instead of chasing her for validation or panicking when she pulls back, you need to hold your frame. Because the more grounded you are, the more her walls begin to crumble. She'll realize that her distance didn't shake you, her coldness didn't push you away, and her silence didn't make you beg. And in that realization, her hidden care rises to the surface, because the only thing stronger than her fear is the attraction to a man who won't lose himself trying to prove her feelings. Another thing men overlook is how a woman shows care through tension. She might not always shower you with affection or words of reassurance, but she'll show up in ways that prove she's still invested, even if it's through frustration or emotional storms. She may get irritated when you don't respond fast enough, or she might accuse you of pulling away, even while she's the one acting distant. To an untrained eye, this looks like contradiction, but in reality, it's the clearest sign that she still feels deeply. A woman who doesn't care won't be irritated by your silence, won't notice your absence, won't demand more of you. Indifference doesn't argue. Indifference doesn't get mad. Indifference doesn't test. The very fact that she still creates emotional tension is proof that you are still living in her head and heart. Pay close attention to the way she behaves in silence, because silence reveals more than words ever will. A woman who doesn't care will go quiet and move on, almost effortlessly. But a woman who does care will sit in that silence, restless, replaying everything in her mind. She'll wonder why you pulled back, she'll think about whether you're done with her, and she'll check your presence online even if she doesn't message you. That's how you can tell the difference between indifference and hidden care. Indifference has no curiosity, but care, even when masked, always wants to know what you're doing, where you are, and how you feel. When she can't let your silence pass without overthinking, that's not a sign she's finished. It's a sign you still matter more than she wants to admit. What most men fail to realize is that care is rarely comfortable for women. It makes them vulnerable, it strips away their control, and it leaves them open to disappointment. So instead of openly admitting their feelings, many women hide them behind a facade of detachment. They might act cold, busy, or even unavailable, but it's an act designed to protect their own emotions. If she didn't care, she wouldn't need the act. The very performance of indifference is proof of investment. She needs you to believe she's unbothered because she's terrified of how much she actually is. And once you see this dynamic clearly, you stop panicking when she pulls away and start realizing that distance often masks desire. Here's the truth: women don't stop caring overnight. Emotional detachment takes time, distance, and disconnection. So if you're still on her mind, if her actions still orbit around your presence, then she hasn't detached, she's conflicted. And conflict is the breeding ground of care. Because apathy doesn't wrestle, apathy doesn't test, apathy doesn't overthink. A woman who no longer cares is free. Free of the turmoil, free of the hesitation, free of the emotional roller coaster. So the very fact that she's inconsistent, the very fact that you're confused, is itself the proof. She still cares, but she doesn't want you to know how much. And if you mistake that for apathy, you'll walk away from something that isn't dead, it's just hidden behind fear. So before you think she doesn't care, remember this: care doesn't always look like affection. Sometimes it looks like resistance, sometimes it looks like anger, sometimes it looks like silence, but in every case what matters is the presence of energy. Is she still reacting to you? Is she still aware of you? Is she still adjusting her behavior, even if only slightly, based on what you do? If the answer is yes, then her care hasn't disappeared. It's there, tangled up in pride, fear, or insecurity, but it's there. And your job isn't to panic, to chase, or to over-explain. Your job is to stand steady, to let her emotions untangle themselves, and to hold frame long enough for her to realize that her care never left, because the moment she sees that her feelings survived the storm she tried to hide them in, she'll admit, at least to herself, that she still cares more than she wanted you to believe. The irony is, the more she tries to show you she doesn't care, the more obvious it becomes that she does. A woman who truly doesn't care doesn't bother with the performance. She simply detaches and fades out. But the woman who still has feelings for you will make sure you see her acting detached. She'll post pictures designed to make you jealous, she'll laugh louder around people she knows you're watching, and she'll highlight her independence in ways that are almost exaggerated. That's not freedom, that's theater. And what is theater but a performance for an audience? You're the audience. Her I don't care show only exists because she's secretly terrified you'll believe it and stop caring for her in return. Another mistake men make is assuming that absence of words means absence of care. But women often communicate more through behavior than direct expression. Watch closely. Does she still keep little connections alive, even if they're subtle? Maybe she texts randomly after silence, or likes your posts, or brings up something only you two share when she doesn't have to. Those tiny threads are her way of staying tied to you while pretending she's not. And here's the kicker. The smaller and more subtle those threads are, the more real they are. Because a woman who doesn't care won't keep even one small thread intact. She cuts clean. So if you're still seeing those faint lines of connection, understand that her silence isn't disinterest. It's conflict. Think of it this way. If she didn't care, she would free herself of the burden of pretending. Real apathy is peaceful, but her behavior isn't peaceful. It's loud, chaotic, and inconsistent. That inconsistency is her inner battle spilling out into the world. One day she pulls back, the next day she peeks in, then she vanishes, then she reappears. That isn't someone who's over you. That's someone who doesn't know how to manage the weight of her emotions. And the tragedy is, many men misinterpret this as rejection instead of recognition. They walk away believing she's done when, in reality, she's drowning in feelings she doesn't know how to express. Here's where your strength as a man matters most. Don't try to decode every word, every silence, every signal. Instead, step back and look at the energy. Care always leaks through an energy. If her emotions are still tied to yours, she still cares. But if you get caught trying to squeeze confessions out of her, if you demand clarity when she's not ready to give it, you'll push her further into her shell. The man who holds his ground, who allows her the space to unravel her emotions without rushing to interpret them, becomes the one she trusts. And trust, once built in silence, has more weight than any words she could ever say. So before you convince yourself that she doesn't care, ask yourself, is she truly silent, or is she loudly hiding her feelings? Is her detachment real, or is it an act designed to test your strength? More often than not, the signs are clear. If she still reacts, still tests, still circles back in, even the smallest ways, then she hasn't let go. And the man who mistakes this for apathy loses out. Not because she stopped caring, but because he couldn't recognize the difference between coldness and conflict. Remember, women don't stop caring all at once. They wrestle, they resist, they cover it up, and the man who can see through the cover, who can stand still while the storm rages, is the one who eventually earns the truth. She's too scared to speak. Most men don't realize that a woman's silence often comes from fear, not indifference. Fear that if she admits how much she still cares, she'll give away her power. Fear that if she shows you her heart, you'll mishandle it. Fear that her vulnerability will expose her to rejection. So instead, she hides behind a mask of indifference, thinking it will protect her. But that mask is fragile. Watch closely, and you'll see it crack in the smallest ways. The way her voice shifts when your name comes up, the way she avoids places that remind her of you, or the way her laughter seems a little forced when she's around others. True indifference doesn't crack. Fearful caring always does. This is why so many men get trapped in the illusion of "she's done with me." They see the mask and assume it's her true face. But masks are designed to deceive, not to reveal. The truth is hidden underneath, and what she won't say, her behavior often screams. If she didn't care, she wouldn't need to protect herself from you at all. She wouldn't need to put on a mask, because there would be nothing left to hide. The effort she puts into her detachment is actually proof that she still has something invested, and ironically, the harder she tries to act like she doesn't care, the more obvious it becomes that she does, because indifference doesn't require effort. Only conflict does. What you need to understand is that women process emotions differently than men. While men often deal with heartbreak through clarity and confrontation, women wrestle with their feelings in waves. One moment they want to reach out, the next moment they pull back, the next they convince themselves they don't care, only to spiral back into missing you again. It's not linear, it's a cycle. And if you misinterpret one of those withdrawal moments as permanent, you'll make the mistake of believing she's gone forever. But often, her silence is just one part of her cycle, a temporary retreat, not a final exit. And the men who understand this don't chase, don't panic, and don't assume the worst. They let the cycle play out while standing unshaken. The key then isn't to obsess over her every move, it's to anchor yourself so deeply that her waves don't knock you off balance. That's what most men miss. They react to every signal, every silence, every shift in her energy, and in doing so, they lose their center. But the man who knows his value doesn't flinch. He understands that a woman's emotions are fluid, not fixed. He knows that detachment today doesn't erase the care she felt yesterday, nor the care she will feel tomorrow. So instead of reacting, he responds with steadiness. He gives her the space to wrestle with her feelings while holding his own power intact. And that, ironically, is what pulls her back toward him. So before you think she doesn't care, pause and look deeper. Ask yourself, is she truly done? Or is she just hiding from herself? Is her silence the calm of indifference or the storm of emotion she's trying to control? More often than not, what looks like distance is really the weight of her feelings pressing down on her in ways she can't admit. And the man who mistakes this for apathy walks away blind, while the man who sees through it gains an edge most will never have. Remember, women rarely stop caring in silence. They only struggle to carry feelings they can't express, and if you can remain strong while she hides, she'll eventually reveal what she never stopped feeling. The truth most men overlook is that a woman's silence is rarely empty. It is almost always full of meaning. Silence is her shield, her way of buying time, her way of holding back emotions that feel too heavy to spill out. Think about it. If she truly didn't care, why would she even need to stay silent? True indifference is casual, dismissive, without thought or hesitation. But when a woman goes silent after a deep connection, it's because she feels too much to manage. She may convince herself she's strong by not reaching out, but behind that strength is conflict. She replays your moments together. She hears your voice in her head. She remembers the stability you once gave her, and yet she resists because caring feels dangerous to her pride. That's why her silence hurts you so much, because unconsciously you know it's not emptiness, but a storm of emotions she's trying to suppress. And here's the irony that most men never catch. The more she tries to act like she doesn't care, the more energy she spends keeping the illusion alive. Every post she makes with exaggerated happiness, every fake smile she wears in public, every story she tells about being better without you requires effort. Effort is energy, and where energy is being poured, there are still emotions underneath. A woman who truly doesn't care doesn't need to pretend. She doesn't try to make you jealous. She doesn't try to flaunt her new life. She doesn't bother mentioning your name. She simply moves on. But when she's still trying to prove something, especially to you, it's because she hasn't proven it to herself. That's when you need to stop reacting and start observing. The mask always reveals more than it hides, but only the man who stays calm sees through it. This is where masculine patience becomes your most powerful weapon. Instead of chasing clarity, instead of demanding explanations, instead of falling into the trap of overanalyzing her every word and action, you step back and let time do the work for you. Women test men with silence, not because they want to lose them, but because they want to see if the man can remain unmoved. Most men collapse under the weight of confusion. They beg, plead, demand answers, and in doing so, prove they lack the stability she craves. But the man who stands still, who doesn't chase, who allows the silence to exist without breaking under it, becomes unforgettable. Because in that silence, she realizes he's not playing her game, he's not bending to her uncertainty. He's strong enough to let her feel what losing him would actually mean. And that realization, more than any words, makes her care more deeply than she'll ever admit. It's in those moments of stillness that the power dynamic quietly shifts. When you don't rush in to close the gap, when you don't flood her with reassurance, when you don't hand her the comfort she thought she could always access, she's forced to sit with the absence. And absence is louder than presence. Absence forces reflection. Absence magnifies memory. She begins to notice the little things she once overlooked, how steady you were, how grounded you felt, how your presence anchored her storms. Without you, the world feels colder, emptier, less certain. And it's in that contrast that she finally realizes the man she thought she could push away is the very man she can't afford to lose. That realization doesn't come through arguments or explanations, it comes only through the silence you allow her to experience. So before you think she doesn't care, remember this: silence is not the absence of emotion, it is the container for it. The louder her detachment seems, the more it reveals the battle inside her. And if you're wise enough to stop reacting, to stop over-pursuing, to stop interpreting every move as rejection, you'll see the truth for what it is. Women don't stop caring in a clean, logical way. They wrestle, they fight themselves, they cover up, they deny. And the man who understands this, who recognizes that silence often means struggle, not indifference, becomes untouchable. Because while other men are panicking, explaining, and collapsing, he remains calm. And in that calmness, she finally sees what she's been too afraid to admit, that no matter how hard she tries to act like she doesn't care, she can't escape the fact that she does. When she pulls away and convinces herself she's over you, it's rarely because her heart has truly moved on. It's because her emotions have overwhelmed her ability to stay. Most men misread this shift. They think, she must not care anymore. But what's really happening is that she's protecting herself from vulnerability. Women often exit emotionally long before they exit physically. She may laugh with friends, post pictures, and even start talking to someone new. But all of this is part of the performance. It's the act of convincing herself she no longer feels the pull toward you. But late at night, when no one is watching, when her phone goes silent and the distractions fade, her mind returns to you. She replays the moments she swore she'd forgotten. She feels the sting of absence. And while she'll never admit it outright, her silence and her act of moving on are the clearest signs she hasn't. Men often underestimate how much pride governs a woman's behavior after a breakup or a fallout. She might still care deeply, but her ego won't let her show it. That's why she'll mask her longing with indifference. She'll tell herself, I'm better without him, even as her subconscious drags her back to your memory. Pride whispers that reaching out first is weakness, that showing her cards is vulnerability. But understand this, the more effort she puts into acting unbothered, the deeper the feelings usually run. A woman who truly doesn't care doesn't need to prove it to herself or anyone else. She simply disengages. But when she's constantly trying to display her strength, her glow up, her indifference, it's a form of self-defense. She's trying to bury her emotions beneath performance. The tragedy is that most men take the performance at face value and never realize how much emotion lies beneath it. This is why your silence, your ability to remain calm, composed, and grounded, becomes the most powerful response you can give, because silence disrupts her illusion. If you chase, you feed her narrative that she still controls your emotions, that she still holds the power. But when you don't chase, when you don't argue, when you don't explain, you force her to confront the reality she was trying to avoid, that you're no longer orbiting around her. And this shakes her far more than anger or pleading ever could. Anger can be dismissed as bitterness. Begging can be brushed off as desperation. But silence is different. Silence creates a mirror, reflecting back her own emptiness. Silence is the void where she expected you to be, and it's in that void that her performance starts to crumble, because no amount of pretending can fill the absence of the man she thought would always be there. The man who understands this no longer fears a woman's withdrawal. He doesn't panic when she grows cold, doesn't collapse when she pulls away. doesn't overreact when she pretends not to care. Instead, he leans back and lets her play out her act, knowing that time always reveals the truth. A woman can fake happiness for a while, but not forever. She can act indifferent in public, but her private thoughts betray her. She can claim she's over you, but if she's still checking your socials, still mentioning your name to friends, still seeking ways to validate her worth through new attention, she's not free of you. And when you stay silent, when you don't break character, when you remain the man who doesn't need to chase what's already lost, you become the unresolved question in her mind. And unresolved questions haunt women far longer than closure ever could. So before you assume she doesn't care, stop and ask yourself this. Who is she really trying to convince, you or herself? If she didn't care, she wouldn't need to make a show of it. She wouldn't need to prove her independence. She wouldn't need to act like losing you means nothing. True indifference doesn't require energy, but the very fact that she's still performing means the wound is still open. And while you may never see the tears, while you may never hear the words, the truth is that absence cuts her deeper than presence ever did. That's why silence is your power. Not because it manipulates her, but because it reveals the truth she's trying to run from. She can hide her feelings from you, but she can't hide them from herself forever. And one day, when her pride grows tired and her performances wear thin, she'll have to face what she's been denying all along, that she cared more than she ever wanted to admit. The greatest mistake a man makes when a woman pretends not to care is taking her behavior at face value instead of understanding the psychology behind it. Women rarely communicate their truest emotions directly. They rely on subtlety, on performance, on signals buried beneath layers of pride and fear. When she acts cold, distant, or dismissive, she isn't always communicating truth. She's often testing your reaction. She wants to see if you will break, if you will beg, if you will crumble under the pressure. And if you do, she confirms her power. But if you don't, if you remain composed, unshaken, unbothered, she's forced to sit with a different reality. The man she thought she could push around is far stronger than she imagined. That realization stirs something deep inside her, because attraction is built not on comfort, but on respect. And respect only grows when a man refuses to hand over his stability. Think of it like this. Women live in a world of emotions, and in that world, feelings dictate reality. If she feels hurt, then in her mind, you hurt her, no matter what the facts are. If she feels neglected, then you neglected her, even if you were simply working late. This emotional lens explains why she can both care for you and push you away at the same time. Her emotions pull her in different directions, and to protect herself, she hides the very care she feels. The man who doesn't understand this will drive himself insane, trying to match his logic to her feelings. He'll over-explain, over-apologize, overcompensate, and in the end, lose her respect. But the man who sees beyond the surface, who understands that her actions are often masks for deeper emotions, no longer feels the need to react to every move. He sees through the illusion without needing to dismantle it. Here's the secret that flips everything. The colder she becomes, the warmer her internal struggle often is. When she goes silent, when she avoids your eyes, when she convinces herself she's detached, it's usually because detachment feels safer than caring. Caring puts her in a vulnerable position, and vulnerability is terrifying to someone who values control. That's why she hides it. That's why she builds walls. That's why she'll act like she's better off without you. But her silence, her distance, her sudden independence, all of it is proof of how much she still feels. Because if you truly didn't matter, she wouldn't need defenses. She wouldn't need walls. She wouldn't need to act like she doesn't care. Indifference requires no effort. Her act of indifference is effort, and effort always means attachment. The man who grasps this truth never panics when she withdraws. He recognizes it as a sign of deeper emotion, not the absence of it. And this is where your silence, your self-control, and your discipline become weapons. She can't disarm, because women expect men to chase. They expect men to fold, to seek reassurance, to run back whenever there's distance. That's the pattern they're accustomed to. But when you don't, when you resist the urge to call, text, or explain yourself, you break the pattern, you create tension, and tension is the birthplace of attraction. She doesn't feel the depth of her emotions when you're always available. She feels them when you're absent. She feels them when your silence forces her to question what she really meant to you. And in that questioning, she begins to realize that the very man she thought she could discard is the one man she can't shake. That's why silence, when used with discipline, doesn't just protect your dignity, it amplifies your presence in her mind. Before you think she doesn't care, understand this: women are masters of emotional disguise. They'll bury love under indifference, affection under sarcasm, longing under anger. They'll pretend they're unaffected because admitting the truth feels too risky. But the disguise always cracks with time. It cracks in the late night scrolling, in the quiet moments when the world isn't watching, in the tears she won't post online. That's why your role is not to expose her disguise, not to chase her down demanding the truth, but to hold your frame until the truth reveals itself. Because it always does. The more you hold steady, the more her act unravels. And when it does, she'll remember not the words you spoke, not the explanations you gave, but the power of your silence, the calm strength of a man who never doubted himself, even when she tried to make him. That's the kind of man she never forgets. There comes a point where you have to recognize that women are not wired to show care in the way men expect it. Men show care directly through consistency, effort, and sacrifice. Women, on the other hand, often show it indirectly, through contradictions, through push and pull, through tests designed to expose weakness or confirm strength. So when she pretends not to care, it's not always a sign of emotional death, it's a sign of emotional chaos. And this chaos isn't meant to destroy you unless you let it. It's meant to reveal you. Will you crack and prove her right about your fragility? Or will you stay calm and show her that your world doesn't revolve around her moods? That's what determines whether she sees you as another disposable man or as the one who stands apart. Because care in her language isn't always "I love you." Sometimes it's "I'm testing if I can trust you." Men who lack discipline always fail this test. They assume that if she isn't showing care, she must not feel it, and that assumption drives them to chase harder, to over-explain, to drown her in words she never asked for. But what they don't realize is that this reaction confirms her doubts. It proves he's emotionally dependent, unable to stand alone. A man like that is easy to leave, easy to manipulate, easy to forget. But the man who doesn't chase, who doesn't break his silence, who doesn't crumble just because she pulled away, awakens something inside her. He awakens curiosity, he awakens respect, he awakens longing, because in a world full of men who collapse at the first sign of emotional distance, the one who stays calm becomes unforgettable. She may act like she doesn't care in the moment, but over time she will feel the loss of a man who never once begged for her attention. And this is the paradox that destroys most women. They spend so much energy proving they don't care, only to realize later that their act has pushed away the very man they couldn't replace. By the time they drop the mask, by the time they're ready to admit their feelings, often it's too late. Because the strong man doesn't wait forever. He doesn't waste his life decoding mixed signals. He builds, he grows, he leads. And when she finally looks back, when she finally realizes she's lost the kind of presence that made her feel safe and alive, she feels the weight of her own performance. The "I don't care" act that once gave her pride now becomes the very reason for her regret. And nothing hurts a woman more than realizing she trained a man to detach, only to crave him once he's gone. That's the cost of pretending, and it's a cost she pays in silence. The lesson here is not about punishing women or playing games. It's about understanding human nature and protecting your own value. Because the truth is, women will test you, intentionally or not. They'll withdraw, they'll pretend, they'll hide their emotions behind ego and pride. But your reaction determines everything. If you panic, you lose. If you argue, you lose. If you beg, you lose. But if you stay calm, if you let her silence be her problem and not yours, if you continue building your life as though you were never missing anything, you win. Because nothing is more attractive, more respected, more remembered than a man who remains unshaken when a woman tries to shake him. That is the essence of masculine power, not dominance, not aggression, but composure in the face of emotional storms. And when you embody that, you never have to worry whether she cares, because she always will. So before you think she doesn't care, pause and step back. Look deeper than her words, deeper than her silence, deeper than the act she performs for the world. Women rarely stop caring as quickly as they claim. What they stop doing is showing it in ways that men understand. But the truth always reveals itself with time. and time always favors the man who can wait in silence. That's why you must never hand over your peace for temporary validation. You must never let her act convince you to betray your own frame. Because the moment you stop chasing, stop overthinking, stop trying to force her to admit what she feels, you regain all the power you thought you lost. And in that power lies freedom. The freedom to see her act for what it is. The freedom to walk away if she never drops it. And the freedom to know that whether she admits it or not, she cared more than she ever let you see.